Animation. It's in TV shows, movies, advertisements, websites, sometimes even billboards. But where did it come from? Who made it, and how is it made today? The first animation was made in 1878 by Edward Muybridge. He lined up cameras on a horse racetrack. Each camera was attached to a switch, and when a horse galloped by, it set off the switches that were attached to the cameras, which took pictures of the horse as it galloped past. Together, these pictures made an animation. They also proved that all four of horses' legs were off the ground at one point, which was debated by many at the time. At first, the only animations made were only a few seconds long, until J. Stuart Blackton, a popular film producer, made the first short animated film called Humorous Phases of Funny Faces. It was only a few minutes long, but it was the first real animated film that long. Back then, it was also much harder to display animation. Short animation was mostly displayed on zoopraxinoscopes, praxinoscopes, and zoetropes. Later, there were also flip books, which are still used sometimes today, and large projectors. Of course, nowadays we view most animations on TV screens. Television was invented on June 14th, 1923 by Charles F. Jenkins. The film or animation on screen did not appear very high quality at first, but it did make animations and films much more accessible to people who might not be able to afford to see them otherwise. And later, sound was added to film and television. This made stories much more easy to follow. Though this was high technology at the time, it wasn't nearly as amazing for people as when color was added to animation in the short film Flowers and Trees. It really didn't matter to people what Flowers and Trees was about when it was first shown. People were just amazed because it was in color. There wouldn't be something this revolutionary in animation until the early 1990s, when we would use computers to help make animation. Nowadays, computers are almost always used in some part of animation. Many live-action films are made with special effects created on computers, and some films are made entirely with computers. However, though many of these things were revolutionary, the original principle of animation and how it works can stay the same through each form of animation. Animation is the rapid display of multiple images over time. It can take many images, or frames, as they are called by most animators, to make a short animation. Until recently, animators would have to draw every frame of an animation, which could be only 10 or 20 frames, or it could be hundreds of frames. Many key animators would only draw the main frames of the animation that could define the major poses of a character or animated drawing. These frames are called keyframes. The key animator would then send those frames to other animators, who would then draw all the extra frames in between the keyframes, which made the animation much more fluent and clear. This kind of animation is called keyframing. However, some animators don't use keyframing, sometimes because they simply can't. These animators used frame-by-frame animation, which means that they made every frame in the order that the viewer would see them. Frame-by-frame animation doesn't always look better than keyframe animation, and is harder to make. But for some animators, there is no other choice. For example, in some animation, animators photograph character models instead of drawing them out. Since the models are three-dimensional, animators can't photograph keyframes as references to other positions of the object, like other animators, because the character would have to be moved back into that exact position, which is almost impossible for an animator to duplicate. Therefore, they have to start with the first frame of the animation, and work their way frame by frame to the last frame of the animation. There are also many different ways of creating animation. Cartoon animation is the oldest and one of the most popular forms of animation. It consists of mostly two-dimensional characters, made with simple lines and shapes. However, it is not actually a technique of creating animation, since it can be created on a computer or using traditional pen and ink, but rather a sort of style. An example of a unique technique, and to some degree style, of animation is known as stop motion, or more commonly, claymation. Claymation is the most common frame-by-frame animation technique. The frames are made from photographs of plasticine or clay characters at different poses. Stop motion can refer to animation made by photographs of other things at different positions, such as common household objects, metal armatures, or even in some cases, people. There are many types of stop motion, including claymation, lightning doodle animation, and pixelation. Another example of an animation technique is computer animation. Computer animators almost always have the option of keyframe animation. They can also use the computer for a special animation technique similar for claymation, known commonly as CGI. CGI, or computer-generated imagery, is similar to claymation in that it has made with three-dimensional models, but unlike claymation, it has the advantage of keyframe animation. It may also add special effects in CGI that you could never have in most other forms of animation without a lot of effort, such as special lighting effects or objects that can fly without strings